Welcome back to Blam Blam Truckers. Thank you to all the truckers who are trucking along with me today on the continuing adventures of Transformers. So, I started my whole Cybertronian misadventure as background for a game I was going to run, or have Buse run, actually. At the time, with the job I was working, I could not easily GM games because I was always way too tired. I worked the overnight. So, I would put games together for Buse to run. So you'll actually see here in my files here. So this is the background information folder right now. But in my giant Xformers folder, there's a game for Buse. Well, this is the background information for that. So we're not going to look at a game for Buse today. We're going to look at the background information. And I'm not going to go over all of these, but I'm going to go over some of the general information ones. So before the war is a dramatic scene. Prime Argument is a dramatic scene, and Quintesson Cybertronian War is a dramatic scene. So, like, they're written in character, like a story. So I'm not covering those. I'm just going to cover the other things. So we've already looked at errata, I believe, haven't we? No, we haven't. Okay, so we'll look at that, and we're going to look at errata, the Cybertronian Empire, Energon cubes, seekers, and transformers are asexual. So let's start with errata. The programming from a vector sigma or the Allspark allows a Cybertronian to skip infancy and go straight to young adulthood. They are brought online with a language or two, some history, the ability to control their massive bodies at the same skill level of an average adult, and whatever else their parents feel they need. They need time to develop a personality and a code of ethics/morality, but they come online able to adult faster than any other sentient species. I've used the analogy of a baby deer being able to walk shortly after birth. Infant transformers are able to transform shortly after being brought online. So that's something, as you're creating your character or trying to understand the universe, that's something you ought to know. All right. The Cybertronian Empire / Fleshlings. Normally I have a black background for these, but not this time around. Now all of this only applies to my interpretation of the Transformers. I could probably create my own giant transforming robots of one sort or another, of this sort in particular, actually, based on all the background that I've created to create a role-playing scenario for, my friends and the stories I've written. The Cybertronian Empire / Fleshlings. There are roughly 2 million Cybertronians in the galaxy, most of them living on Cybertron. The Cybertronian Empire encompasses over 10 million star systems. Assuming Ascension can do basic arithmetic, they quickly figure out that there are 5 star systems for every Cybertronian. There tends to be more than one planet surrounding a star. For instance, in the Sol system, where Earth happens to be, there are over 150 planets and moons, not including asteroids and objects past Neptune's, which are called TNO, Trans-Neptunian objects, in case you didn't know. Now, by that, I mean planetoids. Yeah. So Jupiter has so many moons, Earth only has the one moon, Mars has 2 moons, all of that. As you go through and count up all the planetoids in the solar system, there's over 150 just getting up to Neptune. That's not even going all the way out to Pluto and the other trans-Neptunian objects. And yes, I still think Pluto is a planet. I disagree with like almost half. The decision to demote Pluto was just a little over half of the astronomers that were present when the vote was made at the Astronomers Society of this, that, and the other thing. Probably the internet. Doesn't matter. Let's get back on this. Energon technology was amazingly adept for terraforming worlds to suit carbon-based life forms, raising the number of habitable worlds in the Cybertronian Empire higher than any other known interstellar empire. With all those habitable worlds, all linked up to the Space Bridge network, who's living there if it's not Cybertronians? Why do they need so many worlds? How does it even work? There are only 700 soldiers in the Autobot army to defend the entire empire, 100 soldiers under each of the 7 Magni. 700 soldiers to defend 10 billion star systems? It works. Now, just so you guys know, I actually took the idea of Magnus and Prime being titles from Transformers Animated, the cartoon show. I thought it was a great idea, so I took it. It's all Transformers lore, right? I'm just putting it all together in a new and exciting way. The Space Bridge network allows instantaneous travel from one world to the next. Each Magnus's army is stationed at one of the 7 major Space Bridge hubs. Once they get the orders to deploy, a Magnus army can be on any world in the Empire in minutes. 100 soldiers may not seem like much, but when there are 100 Cybertronian soldiers, it is more than enough. A mix of 100 tanks, fighter jets, artillery, and other assorted war machines, all of which transform into giant warrior robots. 100 Cybertronians is more than enough. Outside of Cybertron, the political system is different. There are no primes, unless you mean indivisible numbers like 11 and 23. Other planets do not follow the decrees of the Cybertronian High Council. Other planets do follow the decrees of the Cybertronian High Council, but those decrees are few and far between. The Magni and the Autobot army interact with fleshlings far more than the rest of the Cybertronian society, but that's only 700 Cybertronians, many of whom re-enlist over and again. Most Cybertronians don't care about the lives of fleshlings. And that is what most of the galaxy is populated with. Normal, humanoid, human-sized fleshlings. That is why so many Cybertronians, especially the ones who served in the Autobot army, have cockpits and cabs designed for fleshlings. They've taken an alt form to interact with fleshlings, where they were undercover on an enemy fleshling world, gathering intel. While every member world has its own style of government, the Cybertronian Empire is practically a feudal system. Member worlds swear fealty to Cybertron, pay their taxes, and after that are mostly left to their own devices. There is an official requirement for member worlds to have a constitution outlining fleshling rights, but the High Council has never assigned a bot to enforce the rule. While the Magni interact with member worlds, they don't tend to check on fleshling rights, except for slavery. If they see signs of slavery, a Magni is expected to take action. Once they join the Empire, member worlds tend to spend less resources on defense, knowing that the Cybertronians will protect them. They have access to the Space Bridge networks, which has created an interstellar trade network unlike any other in the known galaxy. As Cybertronian explorers add new worlds to the Space Bridge network, fleshlings from various worlds can emigrate there and form a new government of their own choosing. Once upon a time, Cybertron was a conquering empire. Those days have been over for a long time now. In those days, conquered worlds were assigned a guide bot to help them adjust to their subjugation and the transition to citizens of the Empire. Over time, this responsibility was given to prominent member worlds, some of whom treated their charges fairly, while others exploited them, leading to long-standing enmity. Enmity against the exploiters and the Cybertronians, too, for not stopping the exploitation. And I spelled 2 wrong, so we are going to edit. There are a few Cybertronians who truly enjoy spending time with fleshlings. Beachcomber is a geologist who spends very little time on Cybertron. Starscream became famous for integrating member species technology into the Cybertronian database. And of course, there was Optimus with his famous quote, "Freedom is the right of all sentient beings." That's not my best Optimus. Transformers, Autobots, transform and roll out! Something like that anyway. One shall stand, one shall fall. Before he was, I don't know if you know this, but Peter Cullen, one of his 2 inspirations for Optimus Prime was John Wayne. That's right, Autobots, transform and roll out. You can really hear it in the first season of G1. That inspiration, lessens over the couple of the decades he's been doing this, but it's still there. Anyway, before he was Prime, back when he was merely a soldier in the Autobot army, he made it a point to get to know the fleshlings wherever he was stationed. Much to the chagrin of his sergeant, Ironhide, the young fool actually treated them like they were important, like their puny lives could ever be anything more than insignificant. Optimus, however, prevailed, passing on the respect for all life that he learned from his fathers on to many of the bots under his various commands. Wealth in the Cybertronian Empire was measured by fleshlings and energon chips. On Cybertron, wealth is measured in resources and land. Mirage's family has spent generations acquiring wealth and are part of the Cybertronian upper class. They interact with fleshlings in a different way, as employer to employees, and occasionally as equals, making a business deal. So, yeah, questions? Leave them in the comments section down below. I'll happily answer them. But the next thing for background information, Energon cubes. Sorry, I got the Soundwave voice in my head now. Energon cubes, Ravage, Rumble, Ratbat, Transform, Operation, Energon. Energon cubes are energy constructs created with force field technology. They automatically turn all ambient and direct forms of energy into energon. They are created by machines or by transformers who have a special ability that allows them to create energon cubes. Energon cubes are the main way Cybertronians store energon. Energon cubes turn any kind of energy into energon. Put a live wire into an energon cube and it will slowly fill up. Leave an energon cube in the sunlight and it will slowly fill up. Put an energon cube in a fire and it will slowly fill up. The energon fields that energon cubes are formed from draw their strength from the energon inside them. Leave a bit of energon inside a cube and it will last forever, drawing ambient energy from around them and very slowly filling back up. Empty a cube completely and the force fields will dissipate. That wasn't a big deal during Cybertron's golden age. The Allspark was on Cybertron, radiating energon through the space bridges and throughout the Empire. Few transformers needed to worry about refueling, mostly just explorers. Then came the Civil War, and they lost the Allspark. The Civil War destroyed most of the Energon Cube creating machines. Now Cybertronians have to save their Energon Cubes, unless they have a means of creating Energon Cubes, or recharging themselves without Energon Cubes, like a solar port. Energon cubes can be a factor in a game. If one side has no way of producing more cubes, then their supply can be destroyed, thus ending the conflict. Additionally, a side could set up an Energon farm, just a bunch of cubes left out in the sun to charge. Energon is also used as currency throughout the former Cybertronian Empire, mostly kept in smaller force field constructs called Energon chips and carried like coins. Inside a cube, Energon coalesces from an energy to a gas, then to its most common liquid form. Energon inside a transformer is usually liquid. Living energon is different from undifferentiated energon. Energon that is being used by a Cybertronian as fuel takes on aspects of that Cybertronian and can be used in conjunction with a Vector Sigma computer and a protoform to create new Cybertronian life. Undifferentiated energon cannot be used in this fashion. Theoretically, a Cybertronian protoform could be brought to life with a transfusion of living energon. Without a Vector Sigma to program it, the protoform would have no innate knowledge and no personality. Think of them as infants born into adult transformer bodies with no idea how to walk or talk or use any of their innate functions. Truly an infant. And also, by the way, an infant terrible, if you're familiar with the French phrase. First, this is hidden secret knowledge that would take more than a heroic role to know. Second, this is giving me some great ideas. Transformer infants, Transformer kids, Transformer teenagers as they get older, their parents transfers their sparks to robot bodies with more abilities. Yeah, that is a great plot hook. Seekers. So there's I wrote two things up on Seekers, and there's some overlap here, but here we go. Seekers, or Viacons. The Civil War had been at a stalemate for centuries. The Decepticons were besieged on their continent, making the occasional foray into Autobot territory and being pushed back. The Prime's plan of containment was working. Megatron would change all that. Now, this information is all about my game. You won't find this in any other Transformer lore anywhere. I put it together from picking what I liked out of Transformer lore and adding my own stuff to it. This is a Bees original, exclusive to Blam Blam Truckers. One has to understand how Transformers reproduce. They are not organic beings. They reproduce asexually. They are very much robots, but living robots. A protoform is built and programmed with all the information the parents think their child will need. Usually a language and some basic motor skills, walking, driving, etc. Whatever the parents think their progeny will need to start their lives, but usually little else. They could program them with far more information, but these are children. They are starting life. Their parents want them to learn for themselves, not learn from a program. To some degree, you can think of this as deer and other animals that can walk moments after they're born. Once the protoform is built and programmed, it used to be taken to a vector sigma computer where the parent's living liquid energon is mixed together through the vector sigma and injected into the protoform. The few bots who knew how to run a vector sigma effectively brought the protoform to life. Once the AllSpark was created, the process changed slightly. So just a note here, there are bots with the technical know-how to run a vector sigma, or mechanical, I guess the skill would be under technically. I'm not sure which. Probably both, actually. But every single prime knows the secret of vector sigma. One of the requirements for becoming a prime is you are taught the secret of how to make a vector sigma computer, a living computer. All right, onto this paragraph. Once the AllSpark was created, the process changed slightly. The AllSpark is a living, non-sentient computer that radiates energon in an energy form, producing the energon from the zero-point energy field or a gravitational gradient or some such theoretical unlimited energy source. It's nice that I used like real-life potential unlimited energy sources, or effectively unlimited energy sources. The AllSpark produced enough energon to power the entire Cybertronian empire, but it also brought Transformers to life. Parents still built and programmed their child's protoform, but instead of needing a vector sigma, they only needed to bring the child into the presence of the AllSpark, and the AllSpark would bring the child to life. And so the AllSpark was kept on a rotation around the planet, allowing people easier access to the AllSpark. They just had to have their child's protoform ready when the AllSpark came to their part of the planet. During the Civil War, the Autobots controlled the AllSpark and kept it from the Decepticon continent. When its rotation brought it close, Megatron snuck through the embargo, stole the AllSpark, and brought it back to his headquarters. He wouldn't have it for long before Grimlock would use a vector sigma to create the Dinobots, storm into Megatron's headquarters, and take it back, losing the AllSpark in the process. But that was yet to come. Megatron didn't steal the AllSpark on a whim. He had been building toward the moment for over a century. During the long standoff that took up most of the beginning of the war, Megatron had built protoforms, thousands upon thousands of protoforms. He didn't give them basic programming either. All of them got the same advanced programming. Megatron had given them skills in combat. They weren't experts in combat, but they were as good as someone coming out of basic training. He gave them enough biased history to have a worldview and understanding of the world. He gave them a language, and Megatron made them all completely and utterly loyal to him. Let me do that again, like a second take. He gave them a language, and Megatron made them all completely and utterly loyal to him. This is a violation of every taboo in Cybertronian society. No one expected this because no one would ever do this. Creating children is a sacred act. Megatron created them off an assembly line. This was anathema. This was evil. In a single day, Megatron had rebuilt the Decepticon army, making it over triple the size of the Autobot army, and changed the balance of power in the war. Nice, huh? That's one of the keystone events for my continuity, for my world, whatever you want to call it, universe, my take on Transformers. Seekers or Vehicons are, now this is in-game stuff, so I'll read it to you, and then, we'll move on to the next file. Seekers or Vehicons are cannon fodder. Some of them have developed skills over their lifetime, but most of them are still basic troops. Seekers come in 3 basic alt forms: jet fighter, cars, and tanks. Stat-wise, Seekers are 2D in everything, 3D in a few combat skills. Seekers who earn a name generally are more dangerous and have better skills. Treat them seriously, though. Their weapons are just as deadly as the Autobots. Dun dun dun! Alright, on to the next Seeker file. Now this is about Seekers bro culture. This is about playing them accurately. Dude, bro. Seekers are some of the last Transformers brought online. Compared to most all other Transformers, Seekers are children. Thousands of them were brought online together, most in the same day. I'm going to stop doing that accent now. They all have one of 3 alt forms: jet fighter, tank, or car. They were programmed to be devoted to Megatron and the Decepticons before they were brought online. They weren't raised by families. They did not choose this life. But they were born into it and raised in it. Born is the wrong word. They were programmed this way. They were taught evil, grew up in it, and don't know any better. Seekers revel in destruction. They make fun of each other for everything, but especially for doing anything besides destroying things, especially Autobots. The closest human equivalent is a high school locker room for a mid-level sports team. To continue the analogy, doing too well on a test, being too smart, is caused to be ostracized by the group. And ostracism from the group is ostracism from the only life they've ever known, a fate worse than death. The only devotion that might be more important than Megatron to some of them might be their devotion to their own frat boy culture. Might. They're all brothers, all with the same basic mentality. They are devoted to each other, devoted to killing Autobots, and winning Cybertron for Megatron and the Decepticons. Don't let their jock-like attitude fool you. The Seekers are dangerous, lethal, but they're not particularly bright, and they like it that way. Last article. Like these ever get published or anything. This is the closest they're probably ever going to come to getting published. So this is about how Transformers reproduce and trying to wrap my mind around it. That's why I wrote this up, because they're not like us. And I'm going to get into that here. Transformers are asexual. It is hard for Transformers to understand, but it is hard for fleshlings to understand, but Transformers are neither male nor female. They do not reproduce in a sexual manner. They reproduce by building their children and infusing their lifeless protoforms with living energon. Cybertronians measure their lives by the millennium, not the year. They are long-lived creatures and have relationships that last longer than any fleshling have ever lived. These relationships are often deeper and stronger than what many fleshlings call marriage. In an attempt to translate their language, fleshlings tend to give Cybertronians gender. Fleshlings separate them into male and female. Most Cybertronians are considered male, and few are considered female, by the fleshlings. It is important to note that this is a distinction fleshlings put on Cybertronians. It is not a distinction that Cybertronians have among themselves. Elita 1 is no more female in her own culture than Optimus Prime is male in his. It's a very strong statement there. The word in Cybertronic that is translated into English as brother would need several words to get the translation perfect. Sibling would be more accurate from a gender standpoint, but sibling does not convey the depth of the relationship. Neither word is accurate from a genetic standpoint, as Cybertronians do not have a genetic code, nor do they pass down genes of any sort. Nor is it necessarily accurate from a familial standpoint, as many Cybertronians become close with folks they have no familial connection with. Cybertronic uses the same word for close friend, family member, and spouse, where human language need to make distinctions between those relationships. It is important to remember that Cybertronians have very different familial relationships. Any Cybertronian can choose to create a protoform and bring a life online. Many choose to join together with a group of friends in bringing a new life online, sharing the responsibilities of teaching the new Cybertronian what it needs to know to function in their society and guide it into adulthood. This group of friends would refer to one another with the same word that is translated into English as brother. Transformers are alien creatures and very different from us. Reproduction and gender is only one of the many ways we are different. That's it. That's all the articles I have for you. This is brainstorming how to use a Quintesson in an Earth-based campaign. And I only flashed. People are going to be like, oh, I want to see what he was doing there. There's no solid information. You can take a look at it. It's all questions. And do I do this? Do I do that? Do I include G.I. Joe? Do I use Sector 7? What do I do with it? And I have some answers. Mech was another thing I'm very interested in pursuing from Transformers Prime. So you can look at it if you want to. Pause the screen. Yeah, I go pretty in depth. If you're familiar with the Pennsylvania Kecksburg Alien Bell, that's what I'm tempted to have. That crash landing was what maybe brought the Quintesson to Earth. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. It's different. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I certainly do enjoy sharing all these creations of mine with you guys. And just have a great day. Keep on trucking, you blam blam truckers.